Hey everyone! Today we're going to finish up the physiology part of the nervous system chapter, and we're going to continue on with reflexes. Now, this lesson is going to be pretty short, hopefully, and make sure that you're using your extra time to begin studying because you will have a test coming up. So, for reflexes, what are they? They are rapid, predictable, and involuntary responses to stimuli. So, again, they happen pretty quick. You can actually test your reflexes. And again, they are very involuntary, such as flinching, or if you go to the doctor, they hit you in your knee to see if your reflexes are working. Now, reflex testing is actually an important tool, which is why if you go to the doctor's office for a physical, they're going to perform a reflex test, see if your knee jerks when they hit it. And the reason they do this is because it's a good way of evaluating the condition of your nervous system. In other words, is your nervous system acting the way that it should? Reflexes occur over neural pathways, so neural just means nerve pathways, and these pathways are called reflex arcs. Now, there are two types of reflexes, and they go based on the name of what they stimulate. Now, these words, you've seen them before. The first one is somatic reflexes, and the second one is autonomic reflexes. Again, these two words we've heard when we talked about the somatic nervous system versus the autonomic nervous system, and we're going to go ahead and redefine them just for you guys to have. So first, we're going to talk about somatic reflexes. So let's talk about this first. If we remember and recall, the somatic nervous system stimulates skeletal muscles. So here, our somatic reflexes are going to be those reflexes that stimulate our skeletal muscles, such as the reflex of blinking or pulling away really quick from a hot object, or another reflex, your knee jerk. These are involuntary, even though they're controlling skeletal muscle that you have control over. So they're involuntary, although skeletal muscle is normally under your voluntary control. And again, a good example of this is pulling your hand away from a very hot object. Autonomic reflexes, this is the second type. These are going to regulate things like your autonomic nervous system regulates. That includes smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, so I'm going to add, it says the heart, so that's cardiac. And then different glands. Now remember, these glands are going to release hormones. So that's what it's looking for. Good examples for this is reflexes that when your blood pressure spikes, or if you're going to release different secretions like adrenaline or epinephrine for your fight or flight response, are going to be released from these glands. So here there are 5 basic elements to the reflex arc that we're going to talk about. So here's just an overall picture, and we're going to bring each one up. So our 5 elements of our reflex arc are as follows. The first one is a sensory receptor. So again, this is where you're going to sense and take in any stimuli from the environment, and you're going to react to it. The sensory neuron is the one that carries that message to your integration center. So the keyword, it carries it to your CNS. Your integration center, which is your central nervous system, this is your brain and spinal cord. This processes that information and gives a direct output. Then you have your motor neuron, and this carries the message to an effector, or in other words, away from the CNS. Now, your effector is going to be some type of organ. This can be a muscle, or again, it can be a gland that's being stimulated. These 5 elements of a reflex arc shouldn't sound new because we've gone over the sensory input, integration, and motor. When I went over the overlapping functions of nervous tissue, I said we'd hear it a lot. And here it is again. Sensory, you sense it first, you process it, you send it out to a muscle. So again, here are our 5 basic elements. We're going to look at our receptor being our skin. So that's going to take in any kind of stimulus. Let's say that we sense that we're cold. It's going to send that signal to our CNS. So this one, our CNS, is going to be our spinal cord. So that's part of our central nervous system. Sometimes in your CNS, you might see an interneuron. So here, this is showing the integration center is just your CNS. But sometimes you can have that interneuron. Hopefully you guys remember that connects your sensory and motor neuron. This goes on to a motor neuron that's going to stimulate a muscle. And that muscle that is stimulated is that effector organ. Now that we kind of understand the basic principles of a reflex arc, there are 2 types. There's the simple type, which is your patellar reflex, your knee jerk that is tested at the doctor's office. For example, here they take their little tool, hit it. It's going to cause a sensory receptor within your muscles to cause your leg to kick out. So the sensory part is actually in your muscle. It sends it down a sensory pathway to your central nervous system. Notice that there is no interneuron. No interneuron. It goes from sensory straight to your motor, and then it stimulates your muscle to kick out. A 3-neuron reflex arc is a lot different. Instead of just having a sensory neuron straight to a motor, the part that is different about it is it has something called an interneuron. An example of this is if you have a flexor reflex or a withdrawal reflex. You still have a receptor, sensory, motor, and effector, but remember that key difference is that interneuron. So down here, I put a star. A 2-neuron reflex arc does not contain an interneuron, while a 3-neuron reflex arc does. I also put a note down here. The more synapses there are in a reflex pathway, the longer that reflex takes to happen. So 3-neuron reflex arcs tend to be a lot slower than if you had a 2-neuron arc. So here is an example of a 3-neuron reflex arc. You touch a tack. You feel pain. It's going to send that you feel pain to your brain. Within your brain, it goes through your central nervous system and it has to jump to another neuron. So that's your second neuron. That's your interneuron. This goes to your third neuron, which is your motor, and that's going to tell your biceps to flex and pull away. Again, 3-neuron arc because you have sensory, inter, and motor. There's your 3. And then, of course, your bicep is your effector organ. And that's the end of the lesson today. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be more than willing to help. And otherwise I hope you guys have a great day.